Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, is my one and only co-host, Tom. What's up, brother? How you doing?
Hello, friends.
Also joining us this week, we're happy to have him back on the show, the Lord of Death himself, the Hobby Bear, a man who needs very little introduction, but I'll do it anyways. Brendan, what's up, brother?
Not much. Just here to hang out and talk about Soulblight, right? That was the show topic, I think. We did a lot of research. Spent just a couple of minutes or something on this army. Just
just a little bit. Just a little bit. The first time I ever played you was many years ago at NashCon. And you had Nagash and 120 skeletons back when you could still cheat with coherency and all of that. It was against my proto, version 1 Iron Jaws. And you beat me, and it was a wonderful game. It was so much fun.
I really like to think, and I think this is the point where Tom and I really get along, that those coherency rules were changed both times specifically in respect to the nonsense that I would engage in.
Yeah, I was the same way. I publicized it on the Grand Alliance forums or TGA forums of what I was doing with the Nurgle shenanigans as well. So, yeah, it was glorious, and I don't feel bad about it at all.
Oh, me neither.
Oh, it was truly wonderful to have one skeleton sitting on a gravesite fighting the other 35 on the other side of the board. It was great. At any rate, all three of us were at Holy Havoc this last weekend. We'll probably talk about that a little bit during hobby time. But first up, of course, we have some news. And Tom, we have a very exciting rumor engine to start off the news. So,
I'm so excited.
So let's
Rat
talk.
Pirates.
Yeah, let's just talk about this Skaven rumor engine, right? That's what this is.
Yeah.
That's a little Skaven hand on a little Skaven sewer pipe. I'm excited for it.
So Underworlds.
So Skaven are getting another Underworlds warband. Great.
Yep, an Eshin warband. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably. Because it would just make sense that the existing Skaven we have are I don't know, like a Claw Lord basically, and some guys, just some dudes, just some rats, some unnamed, unimportant rats. And it really feels like having a Eshin warband is a real missed trick we haven't had yet. So yes, this is just an Eshin Underworlds warband, which
it'll be a bunch of ninja rats, and it'll be sweet.
Yeah, look, at this point, man, I'll take any Skaven sculpts I can get. I'm fine with it. So there we go. Brendan, any thoughts? Any? Do you disagree in any way that that's what this is?
No, I have no dissenting opinions, but I am very public about my hatred of Skaven, so it's I don't feel warmly about it.
I don't know how you could hate Skaven. That's just so. How can you? We're riding around at like a 37% win rate right now. We're the most fair army in Age of Sigmar right now. Okay,
it's not about the army performance. I just hate them so much. So much. So much. And it's really just lore based at this point. That's the hill I'm gonna die on. This is the thing that I've been asked before. If you were James Workshop, what would you do? And I have the power to add or improve anything, and my choice would be kill the Skaven line. It's over. It's done. Legends, all of it. Move on.
Wow.
It's lore appropriate.
Bold words. I can tell that you're in a gosh stan with your hatred of my people who have time after time after time ruined your plans and defeated you. So,
These things are unrelated. Totally independent ideas.
All right. What else we got in the news?
Well, we have a Cities White Dwarf article that's coming. I'm kind of excited about that.
We're getting Cities mount traits. That's what they said in the preview.
No, they said we're getting Griffin traits and Dragon traits.
Yeah, sure.
Those are the two things that matter.
Yeah, that's the mount traits. Those are the mounts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I understand you're going to say, but what about...
So what mount traits would you like, Tom? What big monsters in... like, I can't think of any other big monsters in cities other than griffins and dragons.
There are 0 other mounts, Brendan. You're exactly right. That is the end of the list of... Oh, wait, no, hold on. Wait, shut up, Tom. Shut up. Shut your mouth. Don't you talk.
Luminarchs.
No, there's
Luminarchs
one more. Exactly.
Yeah.
Luminarch, Huracanum, and the Steam Tank. You're right. We should have had like a mechanical construct mount. There you go. That's weak.
It should be named Steam Tanks. Like you give them big names, like ogres.
Yep. And that's all of the potential mounts. There are no other mounts in cities. Yes.
Or a Phoenix. There are Phoenixes in that army, and I played them this weekend, and I would love mount traits.
I don't remember seeing those.
Really? Really?
No, I don't.
How many rounds?
You were fighting a wizard, mind you. That's how many rounds to you, sir?
He's got a point. I'm siding with Brendan on this one. You couldn't even kill a wizard.
And 10 brutes. Let's be very clear. And 10 brutes.
Who chose to not Titanic duel my Sorcerer Lord on Manticore? It wasn't
did for
Vince.
One of our rounds of combat.
It wasn't Vince.
Wasn't me. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Call me Shaggy because it wasn't me.
Come on, man. Phoenix traits. That's all I'm asking for.
You don't know that I don't know that they'll probably have Phoenix traits in there too. But anyways, it's going to be that and then grand strats and battle tactics that should be thrown immediately into the fire. So there you go. It would truly be the best thing in the world if they gave us a mechanical upgrades table or something for like Luminarchs, Huracanums, and Steam Tanks. That really is the article that I want. Like,
man, can you imagine Luminarch and Huracanum mount traits?
It'd be the coolest, right? Like,
it'd be really awesome.
Yeah, like it's a neat idea. You could give them like special prayer upgrades or special like magical reliquaries or Magitech or whatever. There's so many options. They should completely do that. They won't. Because we always take the boring road, but the road most traveled. The road most traveled. Thank you. Yes, exactly, exactly. But we can hope until the article comes out. I will maintain hope.
We will likely see something acid or breath weapon based for the dragon.
Sure. We
have something sharp talons for the griffin. All the normal.
Yeah.
So boring.
Mm-hmm.
So boring.
I think what we can all agree on is that as long as the Phoenixes, whatever, don't get any traits, we're all better for it. That's fine. Or you can give them traits and then you move them all up by 30 points. I'd be fine with that too. That's okay.
You shut your mouth.
All right. What else we got in the news?
We have so an interesting, like, obviously this is tangential to AoS. But we had the 40K update where they're like, "Hey, we're fixing everything. By the way, we're doing everything quarterly." So that was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Big changes too. Big points. Lots of rules changes. All that kind of stuff.
So quarterly. Can we talk about this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
That seems quick.
Way too fast. Way too fast. I
understand the need to evaluate and respond to the meta, but are these patch notes? Is that what we've moved into? Is MMO patch notes?
I do not want. Here's what I'll say: I do not want quarterly updates from AoS. Any updates that we get should be pushed into the app. Let's start there. Okay, so as long as they put them in the app, I'm better. But we should not have quarterly updates for AoS. That's too fast. We don't here's a quick story. One of the people we played at the tournament, they were running a goblin army. Okay?
Yep.
And they were running all squigs. Super nice guys.
Yeah, they were. Yep.
Super nice guys. It was a really fun game. It was like a Night Haunt and Gits combination. Yep. Mm-hmm. And so he put his squig army on the table, and I was like, "Oh, cool! You run in Maws of Jork." I made the joke we always make of calling them Maws of Jork. And he was like, "I don't understand what you mean." And I said, "Oh, I'm just being funny. I assume you're using the Jaws of Mork subfaction." And he was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." Because he went and bought the book. Forgets. And that was it. That's where he stopped. He didn't know there was other things that contained rules for his army.
And they're not in the app.
Right? And so I was like, oh, buddy, you need to look into that. It's going to really change your world. Like, it's going to be a big difference for you. So, you know, the point being is that, like, these kinds of rules updates that get pushed out so much, you know, people aren't always aware of them, especially like low information people aren't really aware of them. So I'd rather we stick to the existing FAQ schedule. We've publicized that a lot. Everybody talks about it. It's become kind of a known quantity. And then we put real updates into that. We do what the FAQ was supposed to have done originally, which was they said it would contain balance updates. So do that. Just do that thing.
At the bare minimum, like, it should all be in the app.
Yes, and it should all...
Dog remarks are a thing. Like, because I was like, oh yeah, let me just pull up the app. And then I, like, scrolled through everything in the app, and I'm like, I got nothing, man. It's not in here. You have to go buy the White Dwarf.
Yeah,
it should be in the Broken Realms book that it comes with. But that's the thing, is like, you have to know that it's in that book, and you have to go looking for it.
Right, exactly. You know, I really just believe 6 months is the correct pace for, like, the players of the game, and that these kinds of updates should just be put out as free FAQs every 6 months, generic game balance stuff, points adjustments, and War Scroll fixes. Like, do the fixes we all need to be done, and there you go, and that's fine, right?
Yeah, because I think when you get to the quarterly update revision of it, the only people it meaningfully impacts are people who keep like one or two armies, like not even like full collections, right? One or two armies. And the ability to be successful in that environment is maniacs like me who don't have armies. They have Grand Alliance collections, and they go, okay, points change, and I just go, all right, well, I guess we'll just put this unit on the shelf, and this other unit that I have far too many of to begin with is now good en masse, so we'll just take that off the shelf, and I'm good to go.
Right. Yes.
Like,
exactly. No, I completely understand, because, you know, I'm in the same boat with several armies, right? It's whatever they would decide to make, whatever gets better or worse is irrelevant to me. Like, who cares? I've got it, you know, for a lot of these armies, I have it all, because I'm a serious huge fan of the army, and so I just kept painting it. You know, like, my Slanesh army is a great example, even with the new stuff. I've got tons of that crap, too much to my own chagrin, even though I ran out of steam painting as much as I wanted to, because it just became depressing to me. But, you know, like, you can vary that stuff, and it's fine. But for a lot of people, that's not the case. Exactly what you said, right? And now, in 40K, they probably need it every 3 months. It's a different game. It's a much more complicated game. There's a lot, it was, you know, way more off-kilter than AoS. So maybe quarterly is right for them. Like, I'm not judging their use of that in 40K. I'm saying for AoS, let's just stick to the 6 months and actually
make the meaningful changes, because we've had too many winter FAQs where, you know, the December, January FAQ passes, and we all just kind of look at it and collectively shrug and go,
right,
why?
Right.
Nothing is different now.
Yeah,
exactly. And the trick is, it's never going to really get updated through books being released, because the book releases have to be planned, you know, 2 years in advance, right? Is when they start working on it, 18 months to 2 years in advance. So they're not really aware of the meta they're going to create. They don't have a futures league, right? Like Magic does.
Right.
You know, where they have internal people playing literally the available sets in their current state 2 years, 3 years out from where it is right now, right?
That'd be a fun job.
Isn't that a crazy job?
To not live in the present, but to live in the future.
Right. You know, and that's never going to be the case for us, so that's fine. So instead, like, because you're not going to have that, because we can't rely on the books to do it, fine, this document is the way, right? And there you go. So, Yeah, I think that's straight. That's my take on it. I think if you go faster, you're just gonna the people are gonna fall off. That's what comes down to. Like, people will not be able to keep up with that pace of change. So, yeah, there you go.
Well, and that kind of hits, the FAQ bit of it hits something else that I feel deeply passionate about in this is the not permitting books at events until an FAQ is out.
Yeah.
I am not a fan of that at all. Right? Like, I agree that we should probably be turning around FAQs on the books a little bit quicker than the month to 6 weeks that we're dealing with. But that's something that needs to be resolved at the individual tournament organizer level. Like, if you can't handle the couple of complex rules interactions, or you're not able to, decide what, rules as intended is, and like, I just think that's a bad solution.
I still remember you. What was that? Was that Holy Havoc, like 2019 maybe, or whenever the Ogre book came out. I don't remember when the Ogre book came out, but whenever it did.
Yeah, 2019. Yep.
You were there. It came out the day of Holy Havoc, that Saturday. You had gotten it at like midnight from a store the night before and brought it to the tournament and played the army. Like, where that book released on the day of the tournament. And you know what? It was fun. It was fun.
It was such a blast.
Yeah. So, at any rate, probably a whole different show. But let's keep moving. We got one more. Hi, Tom.
New War Scrolls from Red Harvest.
Yes. So let's look at those bad boys. All right. So we've got these War Scrolls here. I believe we heard that the Spider people are 100 points, and the Dark Oath people are 110 points. Okay. So let's keep that in mind. Okay.
Why hello?
So and the Dark Oath are actually interesting. So 6-inch move, 5 up save, 6 bravery. You get a Slaughterborn and 2 Proven. The key is the Slaughterborn has 3 attacks at 2 damage, and the Proven have 2 attacks at 2 damage. Everyone else has 2 attacks on 4s. 4s no rend 1 damage. So you get a little God Speaker dude who can roll and maybe get you a command point only for this unit. Who cares? The important part is they have Death Blow, where if the unmodified hit roll for an attack is a 6, they inflict a mortal wound. Given that the unit of 10 people, so it's 10 dudes, right, makes 21 attacks because of the champion. That's pretty good. Every 6 being a mortal wound.
For 110.
For 110 points. And then they have the Oath of Conquest. If you gain control of an objective previously controlled by your opponent while this unit is contesting it, this unit fulfills its oath, and from that point on in the game, has a 5+ ward. So then they're 5 up, 5 up. Quite survivable. Now,
scroll.
Yeah, it's a good scroll. Now, it's not battle line and doesn't have a way to be battle line unless something really weird happens.
Goodness, by the way, because that would be nuts.
Sure. I actually agree. Like, it would be bad. Yes, the Dark Oath Saboteurs, as we're going to call them from now on. I agree with Rob. So the Dark Oath Saboteurs. It is hilarious that they don't have the proper interaction because they lack the cultist keyword to interact with the Dark Oath Chieftain and War Queen.
Yeah.
Like, their own Dark Oath bosses can't buff them, which is
And they
funny.
can't be marked as well.
They cannot be marked, correct.
They are unmanageable. They're the employees who just cannot, they cannot be managed. They're good at what they do. They do their own thing, but my God, good luck telling them what to do.
Yes.
Yeah. But this is a good unit. Like, I can see this potentially having a use, depending on what your battle line makeup. Like, 20 of these guys for 220 points. Pretty scary unit. Could do the damage, could pull somebody off an objective, and then actually becomes somewhat tough. It's an interesting unit at 110 points. And really beautiful sculpts all the way down. So, cool. So I like that. And then we have the Spider people, who are awful. The Spider people are 100 points. They are cultists. So, how about that?
Right.
That is an advantage today.
That fixes everything. We did it.
Soren says I have it backwards, that the Tarantulos is 110 and the Dark Oath is 100. That is less believable. How? That's what? Why?
Even better.
Why?
You have my attention.
So the Tarantulos are cultists, which is an advantage because they're, cultists. And which has a lot of interactions in the army as far as marking and leaders go, and paying attention to the Dark Oath War Queen and Chieftain, ironically. But you get 13 models. One is a Broodmaster who gets 1 additional attack, and you get 3 Spider Swarms that regenerate every round. Basically, you get D3 Spider Swarms back. So you have a regenerative 3 models in the unit. But they don't have anything special in how they attack. They're on a 6-up save.
They're spiders without poison.
Yeah, and when they move, they can pass across terrain, which okay. Like, cool.
Weird.
Enough.
You know what else passes across terrain?
Flying
Things
things.
with fly.
Yeah.
Moving.
I mean, it is just a move, not a normal move, which is nice. So you can run. Right. So it is possible for them to walk over a relatively big piece of terrain just to give some defense to this ability. But yes, these guys are not good.
Nah.
Other dudes at 100, now 200 points for 20 dudes who can do mortal wounds and gain a 5-up ward. Way more into. You were using some Slaves to Darkness over the weekend there.
It was.
I could have seen those guys being like a replacement for what your for one of your units in there.
Untamed Beasts were.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
If I had the points, maybe. But I needed the battle line and the other stuff, so I think I'd still rather have a unit of 20 Marauders than a unit of 20 of these guys. Just for the reliability in what I'm asking of the Marauders.
I mean, it's the charge. It's the charge ability, right? That's the trick.
Yeah.
Yep. They got that charge ability got your Warlord free in the final match.
It sure did.
It did. Jacob Sim says, you guys really don't like 39 models regenerating sheer weight of dice. Not really, because they're all bad attacks with no rend, and that's just not worth that much, and they're going to die in bucket loads. Like, if anything touches
Also,
them,
that means
they
you spent
just
2 of your
explode.
reinforcement points on it.
Right. And that's just, like, sus, I suppose. And you only get D3 dudes back in that big unit still. It's not like by going to 30, you would get 3D3 back. It's just if you have... Oh, no, sorry. It would be 3D3. I apologize, because it is for each Broodmaster. I apologize. Which you could get 3 Broodmasters. I'm sorry. So, yeah, I mean, you get 3D3 dudes back, but...
And then another D3 from Livestorm.
Or, sure, if you really want to throw good money after bad, sure, I guess. I mean, the problem is they're just going to explode if anything at all touches them. 330 points, I can find better stuff in Slaves to Darkness. That's the challenge. It's not that they might, there are some armies where this might be a good investment. But in Slaves to Darkness, you've just got so many options that are in this space.
Yep.
Right? That's the challenge. So, yeah. Although I do agree with W. Soren, that's a nice pick. That's a great pick. I hadn't thought about that. Soren said the only thing I think is good for this is Kabbalists, where you're eating a D3 models for your spell casting, and you get back your free D3 spiders. So that's cool. That is a fun interaction. I hadn't considered that. The problem is the existing ones, like the Iron Golems and the Untamed Beasts and stuff, are just so bargain basement cheap right now. Right, you're getting those guys for like 75, 80, 85 points. Like, it's nothing. Right. So, at any rate, yeah, that's those guys. Cool stuff. Glad to see that they're fun. I imagine we'll see some of the Dark Oath people maybe trot out in some armies. So that could be cool. And the Tarantulas, I guess, if you're doing a Kabbalist thing, it's more fun than trying to get your snake regeneration back, because that's how you were traditionally doing it. You were using the snake boys, sacrificing the little snakes, and then getting back snakes. Okay. So, that's the news. All right, gentlemen. Sorry, I got to grab my timestamp here. All right. Let's talk about pick of the week. Brent, what would you like to share with everybody?
So last time I was on, it was just before, the United States election, and I recommended people register to vote. And if I remember correctly, chat hated that. So I've learned my lesson. My recommendation is to engage with your local public government. Be the change in the world you'd like to see. By and large, at least at the local level, you can make a lot of change by just participating. Going to school board meetings, going to public forums, knowing who you're electing as sheriffs and judges and things like that, and that can drive, at least in your community, the place that you are most likely to be affected by. Ideally the things that you'd like to see. So, yeah, that's my pick of the week.
I like it. It's a good one. Engaging with your local government is good because those are the people whose policies usually have a pretty direct impact on your life. So, plus I've watched lots of episodes of Parks and Rec, and you got to balance out some of the crazy people who go to those meetings. So, there you go. Tom, what's your pick of the week? What would you like to share with everybody?
Two. One is a content creator. Obviously, he's no stranger to the show. 2+ Tough. Doug put out a video last week on why you should play Stormcast Eternals. Funny story. There's a lot of reasons why you should play Stormcast Eternals. I got to watch a bunch of them this weekend. And so I encourage you to go check out Doug's video, and as he kind of walks through the beauty of Stormcast and all the ease of getting into it and all that. So it's a great video. And then the other one I want to promote is I actually finally pulled the trigger on Warhammer Plus, and there's some fun. I enjoyed under the Lore Masters or Lore Keepers or whatever series. They have a fun treatment of both Nagash and Teclis. And so the Teclis one is the one I enjoyed because they're from a content producer standpoint, folks have done more exhaustive treatments. I think about Chuck's deep dive into Teclis and its history and everything. But one thing that I loved about it is they were showing the continuity between Teclis of the old world and who we have now with the Lumineth, the Teclis of the Lumineth leadership. Oh, and also the IDK dismissal, and just showing kind of his arc, and I appreciated that, and I hadn't previously seen that, and so it was something that I really enjoyed.
Nice. All right, cool. My pick is going to be the anti-elf pick. I am going to select for my pick of the week, Honest Wargamer Rob, who put up a wonderful video today about why Sentinels are terrible. And even though they were part of the team army that I just played with, watching them work was truly disgusting.
The first two places had Sentinels, heavy Sentinelists.
Yes, Sentinels are awful and should be changed. There we go. And Rob has a little 20-minute video about why Sentinels are dumb. And I agree with his take.
I enjoyed rolling dice all weekend.
Sure. I think the game against Brendan where you just piled all of them behind a house, completely behind a building that they were getting a bonus from, and they couldn't be seen or interacted with, and they were just killing one of their characters every round, is probably not a super positive experience sitting on the other side of the table.
No, the worst would have been the prior game 4, when there was a mountain. That was an objective that they were hiding behind. Yes. And they could not be seen or interacted with at all back there.
Yes.
And they were all
under a mountain, literally.
I hid them under a mountain and shot over the mountain at the other side that they were trying to hold the same objective.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was and I was getting +1 to wound because the mountain gave that. So that was great.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So fix them. Maybe take away that whole shooting without line of sight thing. I don't care that you've got a bird. Lots of people have birds.
Just make it once a game.
Just get rid of it. How about we just get rid of it? That would be great. Let's just get rid of it. It doesn't need to be there.
Push them into Skaven and push them over a cliff.
You just want the archers go with the rats into the ocean. I see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let's talk about some hobby time, gentlemen. All right, hobby time. What have you been working on, brother? Brendan, what's on your desk?
A lot of things. I've had a lot of hobby ADD, not been really able to focus too much on anything. I've been trying to do some Cruel Boys painting. That was ideally what I was going to be bringing with me to Havoc, but work largely got in the way. So that didn't happen. And I've been painting my Vulture here tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going for something a little bit different since all my stuff I'm trying to do in an ice theme, the same basing you saw with the Slaves to Darkness, but like trying to take it up like just a little bit. So like a snow vulture of sorts. Is
Sure.
kind of what I'm gonna be trying for. Getting the depth of color on the wings has been something. But you got to push yourself, right? Like
That's right.
it's one of those things where the boss, the swamp boss, I painted him kind of like a light icy blue, like the whatever the monster thing is. And I went, what if I took this one level higher than I feel comfortable with? And
That's where you learn.
and did
That's in the
yeah, did
learning
that
zone.
with Centerpiece.
Yeah.
So
Look, one level above where you're comfortable with, that's the learning zone. That's where you want to be. That's where you learn. Nothing wrong with that.
yeah,
I'm excited
so
for it.
I am too. I think it'll be okay. It Tonight was the first night where like I actually have sat down and started to like work on the next layer of white to try and get it where it needs to go. So yeah, so that's where I'm at. I won a bunch of Slanesh stuff at the last couple of tournaments. I've got a Bellacore that I need to work on. So I'm all over the place. Like, I don't know.
Look, there's nothing wrong with having a full hobby desk, I suppose. The saddest thing that I obviously at Holy Havoc there's a raffle. Well, all three of us attended Holy Havoc this past weekend tournament in Naperville, Illinois. It was absolutely fantastic, wonderful, wonderful tournament. And and Steve has announced he's sticking with the teams format.
Love it.
Which we're all excited about for Holy Wars as well. So in the spring, February 12th and 13th. We're not technically doing an event slide this week, but I'll talk about it real quickly. Anyways, February 12th and 13th, which I'm to understand is Super Bowl weekend. That's what I've been told. I don't know that that's a thing, but
And the weekend before Valentine's Day?
it's not on Valentine's Day. So I mean, how much? That's not
It's
a thing.
fine.
There's no Valentine's
It's
Day
fine.
Eve.
It's fine.
Like whatever. But at any rate, it's going to be a team game as well. Very excited about it. And so I hope to see everybody there. It's going to be 72-person event again, which I know we can pack the house again, or socially distanced pack the house again, as it were. But we were all there over the weekend, and we were all obviously playing through all these great games, and it made me think very much about a lot of hobby because the standard of hobby was so high there. And so when I got home, I was like, it's time to paint again. Let's get this done. So my thing that I'm working on right now is something completely unrelated to AoS. It's this guy right here. This is the Emperor's Champion from 40K. But he was painted very quickly for a purpose, for a video that's coming out. And it's going to be super fun. I'm very excited about it. This may be part of a challenge video with somebody else. And what I want to make sure is that when that video happens, that I win the challenge. So you all need to make sure when that video comes out that you vote for me. That's what I'm saying here. Not you'll see when it happens. But let's vote. Let's vote for me. Don't let this other person win. Don't let him win. All right. It was a great tournament though. Tom, what's your hobby time? What are you working on?
Yeah, so I assembled a model today that I never thought I would touch. Ever.
The hammer swarm thing?
Yeah, that's right. That's gold plastic, folks.
Mm-hmm.
And got to Dremel out and start working on some of these hammers. And I have a conversion project that I'm actually quite excited about. So I'm gonna rip this model apart. It's gonna be great.
I'm excited about your conversion. We'll see what actually becomes of it. I think it's going to be impossible, but I'm excited to see you try. One step above where you're comfortable is learning, so I suppose you'll definitely be in that zone there. All right. So, yeah, and I've got a lot of stuff to hobby. Back there is a little Lumineth. I have to paint a Lumineth now. I have to paint one of these elves. He's right there. There he is.
Ooh.
He's next up. All right. Well, gentlemen, with that aside, shall we turn to the main event for tonight? Shall we turn to what we're going to discuss, which is the
Zoning laws.
the Soulblight Gravelords in 3.0. There they are. I had to use this piece of art with Luke of I because I think Luke of I is like super cool. I know a lot of people don't necessarily love the Vengorian Lord model. I think it's cool as.
Well, I'm sorry they're wrong.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Now, when this army came out, and we did a review show, I would say I was middling to positive. Like, that's kind of where I was.
Sure.
And we had kind of a range, but I think some people felt a little more negative. And then there were those who were standing it from the beginning.
Sure.
Brendan, you were one of those. Okay.
Yes, I was.
And
we took copious notes on everybody who disparaged the quality of this book. Everyone should have been receiving letters as of late. If you have not, please let me know, and we will send you your letter telling you were wrong.
That's right. That's right. By the way, as we get into Soulblight, if you love the idea of the spoopy models of Soulblight, do hit that like button. Don't forget to hit like. Don't forget to subscribe. All that fun stuff. Hit buttons. It's fun. So, Brendan, before we get into this, why do you like the Soulblight Gravelords? You're the Lord of Death. Give me the pitch. Why should people love this army?
So I am also on a podcast, independent of this, the Cubic Shenanigans podcast. We're a Warhammer podcast oriented at actual education when, in and around the game. So when we do Battle Tome reviews, it's not just the exclusive nature of going through it and reading the War Scrolls and being like, numbers good, low points also good, numbers bad, points too high. Like, that's not what we're trying to do. A lot of what I'm going to, we go through in that is explaining critically how things interact, what the overall army construction looks like, how you approach different missions and different list building, and the things that you're going to struggle with by doing it. So one of the most common questions I'm asked is, hey, I'm new to this. I really want to learn to play this game, and in some cases, I've been playing for a while and I want to play this game competitively. What army should I look at? Orc Warclans is still my number one. If you are looking to play, looking to learn the fundamentals of the game from a competitive perspective and understand all phases of it, Orc Warclans is still your start. I think Soulblight Gravelords, this new book, has moved into a very strong second place. The only thing that I think keeps it out of first place is the lack of shooting in the book. That's not a phase of the game you're going to necessarily learn from your side of the table. You'll end up learning it from the other side in prevention status. It has an extraordinarily wide range of models. It has a lot of very unique ways to play the army, even with just the small change of whatever your lineage is. So the lineages here are the sub-factions that grant you different rules and command ability or command traits and artifacts. So if you are oriented towards playing the death stuff and you're looking to play competitively, but you're looking at a place of where to start, kind of doing that learning, this is the book to do it in, because as you would branch out to the other death armies, they are some larger skew version of what it is that you're going to be able to play out of the Soulblight book.
Nice. I like all that. I think, and I think it aligns with, by the way, my favorite part about doing the Soulblight Gravelords revisited in AoS 3.0 is that I get to use the Chiller font, which is something I almost never get to use. I love that, the Chiller font. Like, what a hilarious font. At any rate, I need a good site. Hey, people in the comments, give me a good site that isn't awful where I can download good fonts, because I'm trying to find the John Carpenter font, which has a name, but it's the Carpenter font from Halloween. I really like it. But all font sites are unbelievably sketchy. So I need a place where I can find the John Carpenter font. This is a weird thing. But anyways, there you go. Okay. I think my summary matches more or less exactly what you said, right? It's an extremely varied force that plays well in 3.0. It's got a good list of strong monster heroes, good capabilities, good utility, solid battle line with some regenerative capabilities, allowing you to have good trading potential. Like a lot of AoS 3.0 plays into the trading game. You take a point, you're willing to sacrifice to give them the point back, and then you hit their unit. What you want to be losing is something less valuable, and I think this army trades extremely well. It has strong support hero pieces with excellent utility, and strong hammers that can bait a strike and shift enemy units when necessary. What do you think about my summary there? Does that sound right?
I mean, I didn't object when you sent me the email, so I mean, by and large, that's very correct. One of the cool things is you can build really different lists. The only sub-faction I think that really doesn't hold its water right now is Avangori, where you get Terrorgeist and Zombie Dragon battle lines, and you're incentivized to bring the big stuff. That doesn't mean you can't make it good. I think that you are going to have to be a better player to see the same level of success out of it. There's a lot of very cool heroes that do very cool things, which is one of the things that people end up really looking for. You can play an elite army, you can play a horde army, you can deal mortal wounds, you have rend, you have multiple damage steps, you can just drown them in 1,000 cuts, you can swarm with so many bodies that your opponent's not going to be able to get through it. It's really whatever you want this to be outside of, I want to shoot a million things at range. Sorry, this Grand Alliance isn't for you. Not even this book. You are in the wrong place. Order's where you want to go. They're over there. They have all of the guns. Yep.
I think that's exactly right. Tom, what do you think about your perception of Soulblight? I remember the first time, you hadn't played 3.0 yet, and you came down to visit me. And you were like, I want to see what Soulblight's about. So I built a little 120 zombie list.
Very casually.
Super cash. Double Necro, 120 zombie Vampire Lord with Launch of the Soul Seeker Belladama list. And proceeded to maul your KO with my zombie horde. And it almost made you quit AoS, I believe, was what the outcome of that. So what do you think of this army?
Zombies are pretty good.
Sure.
Just in general. I mean, what I would say is that I think that it has a lot of very interesting pieces in it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the opening up of some of those key units from Cursed City really made a difference. I'm thinking about the Gravedigger guy.
Yeah, Gorslav the Gravekeeper.
Yep, he's pretty good. I mean, Vampire Lords on Zombie Dragons have always been clutch, and they still are. That hasn't really changed. I think that it has lots of really interesting tools. For those that want to play Elite, I think that you can go Blood Knights and be fine. If you want to play Horde, I think you can do Zombies and be just great.
Yep.
So, there's a nice range of play in that army that you just don't always see elsewhere.
Sure.
There's some nice tech pieces with Belladonna and her spell. There's just again some neat stuff.
Yeah, the Lycan Curse. Yes.
Yeah.
Pretty great. What are the weaknesses? Oh, Lord of Death, speak to us of the weaknesses of this. If you're somebody rolling up against a Soulblight Gravelords player, and obviously it's going to vary by list, but what do you see as the general weaknesses besides just her it doesn't shoot, right? Of course, but there's a deeper story than that, obviously.
If you're playing not Blood Knights, the army is terribly slow, right? You know, there is the slight exception in zombies. You auto 6 the run and you have the 6-inch pylon. Fine. But basically everything that doesn't have a mount of some variety, incredibly slow. You need to be a very patient player and understand where your setups are going to be. Not just the next turn, but the turn beyond that. And you need to be moving towards those opportunities. A lot of in your non-Nagash, non-Vengorian Lord, non-Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon lists, a lot of what's invested in there is 5 to 8 wound heroes who just die to, to some of these things that some of your opponents are taking to try and reach out and touch somebody. So you have to present enough poor opportunities for your opponent where they have to be concerned with other items, other pieces on the table that they need to deal with. They have various constructions where they can be quite powerful, but I think in terms of just overall output, but if you shift too hard in one direction, you can get caught out in some of your bad matchups where, for instance, like zombies are quite good. Zombies individually don't do enough damage in many instances to pull down some of the bigger stuff. That's an instance where you probably want to be using some Graveguard or some Blood Knights. But if you are moving into something that has a lot of models and the ability to return fire, some of those units aren't necessarily the right thing, and you're going to wish you had some zombies. It's about balance and having a plan in this book.
Nice. I like it. I think that having played against this army a fair amount, somebody in my normal group runs this army pretty often. It's one of their armies in their rotation. They go between this, Lumineth, and Cities. That's like they switch every week, but I've seen enough Soulblight Gravelords armies. And they're also somebody who likes infantry, like as a player. They when they run Lumineth, it's a lot of like wardens and sentinels and everything on foot, right? Like just tons of that kind of stuff. When they run Cities, they'll pull big blocks of Cities infantry. When they run this, they like big blocks of zombies, big blocks of skeletons, dire wolves, things like that, right? They love a flood the zone strategy. And it's interesting how this plays, like, because if you do make a misstep into it, it's funny how it can punish you, right? Like, this army is one of those things that's, like, they have good individual tools that, when applied correctly, can really make a big difference on the outcome of the battle, has been my perception of the thing. Like, if you misstep, they often have the ability to capitalize on it. So I think that's it, but it's not always prima facie obvious when you read the book or the scrolls, right? It kind of happens in game. And I think that a lot of people, obviously they have 2 spell lores. One of them is just pretty bad, and one of them is pretty good. But fortunately, a lot of the real magic, as it were, is just on the war scrolls. Like most of the spellcasting vampires who have spells to cast have pretty good spells. We already mentioned Belladamma's spell. She's got great magic. So like there's options there on the scroll itself. So, okay, cool. Right on. Let's do a little by the numbers, shall we? Courtesy of our friend AoS Shorts, who keeps this running tabulated list. So this is a very popular army, by the by, at 6.9% of the meta, which I believe puts it in the 3rd place overall of meta representation. So Oryx have moved up to number 1, Suns have fallen to number 2, and Soulblight at number 3. So very popular army, and it's put up some good numbers: 34 plus wins, 8 5 wins, but that breaks down to 8 5 wins and 22 4 wins. So it's it's up there. It's a very well performing army. Obviously, the only armies that beat it in the 5 wins category are the Sons of Behemoth and the Disciples of Tzeentch over the course of AoS 3. So pretty strong in that regard.
Reasonable, yeah.
Yeah. and like they put up a relatively nice percentage when it comes to this stuff. Like they're in the top-ish area. I don't have their win percentage. I looked for whether or not Rob had, like, Honest Wargamer Rob Stats had it, and I couldn't find his most recent data set from it. But my memory of them is that they're in the 50s. They're not crazy. They're not weak. They're somewhere in that 50s area. So pretty good overall. So honestly, I mean, it's showing strong results, I guess. I don't know what else to say, right? I mean, the numbers say, yep, it's doing pretty good, but not busted crazy, I suppose.
Yeah, and one of the things that can really penalize you super hard in running this is if you misjudge what the expected breakdown at the event you're going to be going to is. If you are expecting to go in with a lot of combat armies and lols, everybody's got guns, that army's probably not going to fare super great.
Sure.
But there are Soulblight lists that you can build that deal with, range stuff. That you go, okay, I'm expecting to see an average dispersion of ranged armies at this event. This is what I'm going to take. If you feel that you're going to go into an event with a lot of combat stuff, and you play hard into it, you're going to meet them at the middle of the table, and you're going to steamroll whatever you want, as long as you understand where to set up the trades and be patient.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Cool. So I just wanted to talk a little about sub-factions and see if you agree with my take here. In my mind, the sub-factions that are in this book, two of them are one of them is just kind of disappointing. One of them is there to be the fun option. And then the other three have some kind of potential. So what I'm saying there is Legion of Blood is disappointing. Neferata's Force I just find disappointing and not really having any real reason to play it. Maybe I'm wrong. I'd love to be told I'm wrong. If somebody's got a great Legion of Blood list, I'd love to see it. Avangori is there for funsies. Right? It's like, yay, you want to run all your big stompy, crazy monsters. Cool. Here's a fun way to do that. No problem. I don't mind stuff like that being in the book. I like big stompy monsters. I like when they put that kind of stuff in books. It's good. I don't think it's hyper competitive, but whatever. That doesn't make it bad. That just makes it a fun option, right? And then I think that Castellai, Virkos, and Legion of Night all have some kind of potential. What do you think about that, Reed?
Yeah, Castellai and Virkos have been running away with it in terms of just the overall net results, in terms of people who are getting to that 4-win, 5-win section. I was a believer in the Legion of Night at the beginning of it. I haven't been able to master list myself, but I want to say I saw a 5-0 Legion of Night list a couple of weeks ago, and I wish I had grabbed it, as we were scrolling through Twitter and the like.
Sure.
That's the Legion in my mind that, if you're expecting to see shooting, is the Legion that you're taking. That's
Sure.
the one that has the ability to close the distance with the rest of the army and make life thoroughly unpleasant.
Well, yeah, you can its ability to really keep a lot of stuff off that you need to keep off the table, to ambush, to have sort of, to keep things away from shooting, to make sure they can't hit the right pieces, I think is what stands out there, right, in that kind of shooting meta. Yeah. Okay. And then I just listed here Castellai, Virkos, Legion of Night. I listed some of the fun command traits and artifacts that I think are at least could have some interesting play. So with Castellai, Rousing Commander, Craving for a Massacre, Artifacts, Gravesand Shard, Fragment of the Keep in the Red Casket, and Virkos, Pack Alpha, Kin of the Wolf, Hunter Snare, and Spore Trackers. I wasn't a fan. I didn't believe in Spore Trackers until I played a game with it and had all of those stupid things like moving 3 extra inches, and I was like, oh, actually, this is quite impactful. Like it was shocking how much of a difference it made. And then they get the Sangsirian artifact, which is your plus D3 attacks. And then Legion of Night, Above Suspicion, Swift Form, and Unholy Impetus. I think I spelled that wrong. Impetus. I spelled that wrong. And then Vial of Pure Blood and the Shard of Night and Morbeg's Claw, which is really hard to use properly, I think. But it's a cool idea. Yeah, that's my list. I think all of these could find a home in some kind of list. What do you think about that?
Yeah. In Virkos, I'm a big fan of Pack Alpha. We're going to talk about some of the lists that I've been dealing around with, particularly some of the cheese on the Vampire Lord on foot. The Hunter Snare is great. The throwing it on a Vengorian Lord or a Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon to kind of go toe to toe with some of what the Sons of Behemoth are able to score with. The Castelli ones to me are a little straightforward in terms of you get to do your extra rules for free early,
Right.
Which you want to be doing. It's how you power up. It's how you get that list going. Legion of Night, Above Suspicion is great, and I believe it's Unholy Impetus, where you reroll the charges. Here's my book. Yeah, like it's the thing that can be kind of lame in some of these sub factions is some of the artifacts don't do very much for me.
There's going to be a lot of Amulets of Destiny or Arcane Tomes floating around in a lot of lists. Because, I mean, to me it's funny because Virkos, I really like all four of these command traits. Like, I could see a list I built that had all of them, okay, depending on what my unit composition was. But the only artifact they have is Sanctuary in my mind. Like, I think the other ones are just basically all hot garbage. Okay?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I guess then I'm going to find uses for one of the universals if I'm doing it right. Whereas the Legion of Night does have some interesting artifacts, as does, I think, Castelli. Like, I think I could see the Gravesand Shard, the Fragment of the Keep, and the Red Casket all having some kind of use. They're all interesting artifacts to me, again, in the same way.
The Fragment of the Keep is really good, and it plays a part in the list I just blatantly stole from the Just Play guys, where handing out a -1 to wound aura within 6 inches, combined with some of the defensive bonuses that list is going to see, is good. It is good.
It's so good. It's crazy good.
Fire Slayers have been writing on that for a couple years now. The -1 to wound aura.
Right. It's effective. The least buffable profile in Age of Sigmar, forcing someone to be -1 in that, I'll take that. Especially when you consider, and we'll talk about the list a little bit later, some of the debuffs you're going to be handing out as well,
right.
making life extra difficult for your opponents.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. So speaking of lists, let's dive into it, right? I mean, let's just get right into it. Let's get into some lists. Let's look at this in play and talk about what we think about. So Brendan said over 3 sample lists, all very original, all completely of his creation. Ignore the part of it that says directly stolen from other people in certain lists. That's fine. We don't need to worry about that. I think I actually cut that out, by the way, when I snipped your lists. But at any rate, here we go.
That's too bad.
Maybe not. I don't remember what I did. All right, let's start with the Legion of Night list with the list name of I will make this Legion of Night list work. So take us through this bad boy.
So this is the list that I've, because it's night, right? I was finding that as the game state has been changing from the start of 3.0 to modern state, there has been a presence of more shooting lists than originated, things that kind of came to their own in order to answer the questions that Sons of Behemoth were asking.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So my kind of the natural Soulblight list really were not cutting it for me in those matchups, and I asked myself the question: okay, what's the hard direction I'm going to move towards in order to compensate for this? And that was going Legion of Night with a Necromancer General with above suspicion. So when he's set up, off table in ambush, instead of coming on from the table edge, he can be set up anywhere more than 9 inches from enemy models. I basically use that for him to come up through a gravesite and support some of the other units. You have a Vengorian Lord with the Shard of Night, which ignores the Ren characteristics of missile weapons when making save rolls, which, particularly on the Vengorian Lord, is going to be useful. You have Manfred. I hate that I take him so often, but he's just so good.
He really is.
So efficient. He's so efficient.
Yeah. 2 units of 3 Fellbats, and I'm sure some folks are going to go, why? It's points. I took them because of points. And deployment purposes. A unit of 10 Skeletons, 3 units of 3 Vargeist, a unit of 20 Graveguard, and a unit of 40 Zombies, split up between 2 battle regiments. So my first battle regiment, effectively what I do is I deploy my 3 units on the table that I am obligated to in order to meet the nonsense I'm going to engage in very shortly. Because what you can do with Soulblight is you can place a unit in the grave that are summonable for every unit that's on the table. So I have 3 units on the table, so I can place 3 units in the grave. I only have 2 units that can go in the grave, the Graveguard and the Zombies, and they almost always do. You can place 3 units off table with Ageless Cunning for every unit that you have on the table. So off the table typically goes Manfred, the Vengorian Lord, and the Necromancer.
Sure.
Then the Vargeist, totally independent of all of that, can be placed in the sky.
Right.
So over the course of 2 drops, I'm starting the game with 10 Skeletons and 2 units of 3 Bats on the table, and I'm looking at my opponent going, okay, you beat me. You are this 1-drop super crazy shooting list. Congratulations. You get to go first if you'd like. And they go, no, I really don't want to go first. And you go, okay, that's fine. I'm going to drop my entire army 9 inches away from you, and I'm just going to see how many charges I can make, and hopefully I connect with a few of them, because that's going to ruin your day in a very meaningful way. So, I
love it.
I haven't been able to get it working in the way that I'd like. It helps when you roll 9s.
Sure.
Just
It
roll
really,
9s.
it really doesn't help when you don't. So, being 1975, I find it that you're hit or miss on the getting the triumph. Obviously, you take Bloodthirsty here to get another charge reroll if you can, and you're just going to be at some point in this phase, spending a dice reroll on trying to make the charge. One of the things I'd like to try and experiment with in it is finding ways to make the charging a little bit more reliable. But so far, this has been my most effective answer to shooting in Age of Sigmar. It struggles with things that have a lot of armor. That's the trade you make here. You do have a lot of Rend 1, which is great. But past that, you really don't have a ton.
Right. So Two-Headed Calf says you should call this one the Legion of Nines, which I like. I'm definitely upvoting that comment. That is solid. Yeah, and I mean, the Fellbats are interesting because not only are the 2 units of them enabling you to have the other 3 units you need buried in the grave, right? But they're also, Fellbats, we've pointed out, are really interesting because they're big move and they're tiny bases and their ability to absorb to absorb and unleash hell. Right? Oh no, shoot the bats. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the other beautiful part of it, right? Is if they choose to go first and they move up, and I go, thank you.
Sure.
Now my bats are really going to make your life miserable.
Right.
Sure.
Well, I mean, it's the same reason why, in Night Haunt, I run the 65-point stupid Glaive Wraiths that nobody runs, or even Mirrormorn, because all of them do that exact same job, which is here, eat a unleash hell, right?
Right.
And then let the rest of them come in.
Well, and it's just also good chaff, right? Let's not kid ourselves. There are a lot of armies that have no easy cheap chaff, and these little duders are, like 14-inch move models that can get around where you kind of need to be and put them in the way of stuff you need to put them in the way of, which is valuable on its own. Okay. I do love, by the way, they gave the bats retreat and charge. It's adorable. I forgot they had that rule until I just looked them up real quick. As though they would survive.
Fun. Yeah, they're fun. They end up doing some kind of surprising things. Used correctly, you can screen off different areas of the board. They're just annoying, right? Like, it takes time to get through them for, some of those smaller units that you try to keep contained from scoring objectives. Now, obviously, some stuff is just going to walk into it and go, I don't know why you were here. I don't know why you were here to begin with. But I'm here now, and you're not.
Right, sure. So, I've got a question for you in the anti-shooting thing. So Partisan Germ just said, so skeleton and zombie hordes can't regen their way through a rain of shooting. Do you want to talk about the idea really? of bodying your way through? Because I don't think the shooting problem is they kill your units. The shooting problem is they kill your utility pieces you need to make your units actually punch above their weight. But I mean, the reality is you can out-body the shooting where they're not going to bring down your units. I would think. What do you think about that?
A smart player is going to focus fire as it comes across the table and remove one whole unit at a time. Or you leave it on such a small number that the regeneration is very limited. Because you have to remember that you're only getting back 1d3 models for the hero recovery.
Right.
And you have to cast to get another 3. So you're getting between 4 and 6, and one of those includes rolling for heroes.
Right.
Now, with your high value returns, things like Graveguard, you like that. But when you're getting stuff back for skeletons, you'd kind of almost prefer the unit to be dead, so that you can roll against that 5-up in the battle shock phase to maybe hopefully get them a little bit closer. I have been experimenting with a Nagash and 100 dudes list. Go back to the go back to the glory days.
Yes.
And that's kind of a maybe. What I found though is if I don't have the ability to hide the heroes in a kind of immediate and meaningful way, they end up getting hid for me in my dead pile.
Sure. It's going to be raptors or bow snakes or the aforementioned broken sentinels or something like that. There's this sort of cadre of long-range, potentially mortal wound triggering shooters that are out there that are hunters in the meta right now that are challenging, right? Especially for your utility heroes. It's not that they're unbeatable, it's just that they're annoying to utility heroes. And being able to do things like take them off board and then set them up, having above suspicion on the Necromancer is great, because then he can just pop up wherever you need him to be applying the support that he needs to do, right? And it prevents him from getting shot, which is good. And he is very much somebody that people want to shoot. And yes, he has a decent wound pass to other units, but that won't save him against, somebody really focusing fire on him, which, by the way, people will often do because they know how powerful the Necromancer is, right? He's a great enabler to the overall army. He ends up being public enemy number 1 with your shooting attacks often.
A little too often.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's okay, I'll accidentally kill some zombies too. All right. Great. Okay, cool. We're going to talk about Graveguard a little more in the next list. But I want to just get your opinion real quick on skeletons, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We all know zombies are good. This is not a question. Zombies have just one of the best war scrolls for battle line in the game, points to sort of efficacy ratio. give me your take on skeletons. Can skeletons work? Because there's a lot of skeleton stands out there. People like the bones.
Yeah, skeletons work. The thing that I think a lot of people were struggling with in the understanding of how skeletons work is they were looking at them the way the War Scroll used to work, where you were throwing 120 dice at, like 3s and 2s or whatever it was, re-rolling everything under the sun, and just going, all right, you have a 2-up, that's fine. You have to make 106 saves, and your opponent goes, what? And then the unit dies because no one can roll that well.
Right.
Their role is totally different. They are not going to be drowning opponents in dice. Their role is to be a very effective tar pit. The ability to regenerate models when they pile in and fight, and to be able to do that twice with the Necromancer spell. I sat there and went toe-to-toe with an Archaeon for 3 combat phases with a 30-man unit of skeletons, where you're getting 75% back of what he kills, 50% and then 50% of 50%.
Right.
And then keeping a point in your pocket to anti-battle shock. If you orient towards the new role that they have, I found them to be very effective. 10s are probably the best screen that you have in the book, unless you have some points for some direwolves, in which case do that. Because then they're also a fast screen with some more wounds, but they do cost more points. Just a really good unit, but you have to know where their limits are. You can't ask them to do everything, because that's not what they do anymore.
Well, and they also only have 1-inch reach, even with spears.
It's never made a difference to me.
Because they're just not an attacking unit anymore, right? They're not an offensive unit. Right.
Yeah. You'll get whatever damage you get out of it, and that's fine, and that's cool, and that's great, but that's gravy. Because what you're hoping to do is you're hoping to lock down a piece of your opponent's army in a part of the board where they don't want to be. You want to keep them behind schedule. And what I mean by that is they're expecting to have that unit get through something somewhere to be somewhere else at a certain point in the game.
Right.
If you can keep them there longer than they'd like, your opponent starts to freak out. And if your opponent doesn't have a level-headed ability to plan through something that's not working the way that they'd like it to, you're already going to be winning.
Yep. I like that. No, it's a good read. And that's why I said I think that all of the sort of the sort of 3 core, I don't know, battle line, as it were, when in my head when I'm thinking here is skeletons, zombies, direwolves, right? All 3 to me have some interesting different play. I really like direwolves have a very interesting mobility to them, ability to get around. Zombies actually have an interesting hitting power, and I do think skeletons can actually stick. They need a little bit of support. I agree. They can, because you want to have the Necromancer there using Van Hells on them, because that really allows them to regenerate an egregiously larger amount of models into their unit, right? But, sure, can the zombies regenerate? Yeah, sort of, depending on what they're killing. And that's the problem, right? They have to actually kill stuff to regenerate models. The skeletons just do it. They just stand back up, right? Which is a nice advantage.
It has to occur in the combat phase. Yeah, it has to occur in the combat phase, so if you have the ability to remove models outside of that, that's where they start to fall down, and that's where their interaction with shooting starts to become a bit of a problem.
Sure.
Because part of what you're paying for in that unit is their ability to just be there, just to be physically present, and to score points, and to be annoying, and to throw dice at your opponent, and to make them go, wow, yeah, you killed 2 of these guys, but more of your unit should be dead. You go, but it's not.
Right.
And
right. Yep. No, I agree. All right. Okay. Next list. Oh, I did keep it. Okay. Stolen from Just Play is the name of this list. This is our Castelli dynasty. Take us through this bad boy right here. This is an interesting one.
Yeah, so I'm not the original author on this. This is a list that I saw on Twitter. They went 5-0 with it, and I went, huh. took enough bases out, went down to my basement, set up a game, played it out, and I went, huh. So I'm sure there are I'm sure the Just Play guys know how to play this list better than I do. Like just absolutely better than I do. Because what I saw with it is this is one that requires some forethought and some planning and some practice on how it is that you're going to get through it. The strong advantage to this list is you have 20 Blood Knights. For those of you who don't know, are pretty good.
Turns out.
Base 3 up save. Yeah, base 3 up save, pretty good attacks, extra good on the charge, have the ability to retreat, quote unquote retreat, do some damage, and then charge back in against certain size models. Or you can charge into, some big stuff and do some damage. And that ends up being pretty good. The thing that ends up being interesting with them is you obviously have the White King here, who has all of the stuff, because there's one other big unit of note that we'll talk about.
Sure.
Fragment of the Keep, as we touched on, is -1 to wound within 6 inches. So you're already handing out debuffs to your opponents that are in a specific area.
I've heard that Frost Phoenix debuff is pretty good.
It's pretty all right. The Rousing Commander allows you to, once per battle, trigger the Might of the Crimson Keep. You get Bloodied Strength and Stolen Vitality. So those are the 2 more difficult ones to achieve. So what that means is you add 1 to the damage characteristic, and you add 1 to the wounds characteristic of that unit for that turn. So if your opponent is sending damage back at you, your Blood Knights count as 4 wound models apiece instead of 3, which can, save you a couple of models. And the Bloodied Strength with the +1 damage, you want to use this on a turn, obviously, when you're getting all of your charges off. Now, it doesn't affect the mounts, but on the lances, that's pretty all right. They're very reliable, because the other thing that you're going to be pairing this with is Nagash, right?
Big Papa Pump himself, he's here.
Yeah. So Nagash's command ability here, where you are able to reroll hit rolls of 1, save rolls of 1, and become immune to battle shock, that one's not so important here. But the hit and the save rolls of 1 are very important when your whole profile is basically 3s across the board.
Right.
The unit that you're going to all-out attack on is going to be, 2s by 3s. The unit that you have Mystic Shield on, it's probably Nagash, is going to be 2s rerolling 1s on his save. The unit that you all-out defense is going to be 2s rerolling 1s. The ability to have Nagash, be one of these turbo-powered characters who, can Finest Hour, Mystic Shield, and all-out defense, and feel pretty good about getting the Mystic Shield off in almost every single matchup you're dealing with. Almost.
He's still a relatively strong caster, yes.
Yeah, very much so. Having that -1 to wound coming back at you, being able to hand out -1 to hit from Overwhelming Dread, potentially stacking it to -2, making your opponent very unlikely to engage in any +1 antics, being able to potentially split the -1 to multiple units, forcing them to make decisions on what they do or don't want to do, handing out minuses to attack, all very good. Now you can turbo stack the Arcane Bolt, which is the thing that I think is the most common bit that people talk about in terms of the damaging aspect, but you have this ability to go into 12 spells. Some are more useful than others, and pick out exactly what your opponent doesn't want to see. Being able to hand out multiple halving movements of your opponent's move characteristic to keep a critical and key piece pinned in place, with nothing other than just I rolled goodly.
With bonuses. I rolled goodly with bonuses.
Yeah, that's pretty good. You can debuff heroes even more with Decrepify. Obviously, Hand of Dust. There's so much that you can do, but you have to be a proactive and smart player about where you're going to be and when you're going to be with all of this. Being a 1-drop allows you to do a lot of the matchup dictating. the zombies, my interpretation of it so far has been they kind of end up being a free piece. You can either set them up as a screen, you can set them up to block an area, or you can set them up, behind your line to just protect an objective, move back and forth, keep your opponent away from doing any sort of like wild Stormcast shenanigans. This is a list that I've been trying to spend a little bit more time with, to gauge and learn, because I really enjoyed the creativity that went into this army to solve a problem from kind of an off-angle perspective. Obviously, it went 5-0. It went 5-0 in the hands of a very capable player. It went 5-0 in the UK meta. Like, it is something to be reckoned with. I don't know that I fully understand it at the same level that those guys do. But that's been my read on it so far.
It's interesting because it's a potential 5-hammer list, right? Like especially in the turn where you are using Rousing Commander, right? Where if you land the right charges, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's interesting that, and I've always talked about my deep love of 4-hammer lists, because 4-hammer lists often ask questions that the opponent can't answer. Like when you have 4 different hammers, people can generally they can't handle that many things hitting them that hard. And this was interesting because it absolutely can have 5. Even 5 Blood Knights can, especially in the the current meta of smaller units and things like that, they can't all-out defense save stack everything. Like there's going to be one thing they can stop you on and that you'll probably bounce off of, but that's the point. When you've got 4 or 5 hammers, they just can't protect everything. And I think your point about, controlling some of the movement, even if that's minimal, the fact that you've got Nagash, who even if he just like sort of half juices up with a bunch of arcane bolts and then uses the other half of his spells for, various and sundry utility and control, he can still get in there and do what he needs to do. I mean, we're talking about a pretty powerful piece here still that's like decent enough in combat, unleashing 4 or 5 D3 mortal wounds, if that's what we're talking about, and like a stomp, and the potential of then if you roll into your next turn, if he's that close, he can hand of dust people, right? So there's just deep options there to make sure that the things you need to remove are good, and good and dead, I should say. And Blood Knights,
right?
Like,
you got to do it at the right time, though. Like right. You can't just throw like one unit at him and be like, okay, it was close enough. Like, if something needs to be made dead, you got to throw the weight of making sure it's dead, or understanding that it's going to that you're going to be there for a minute, and then you need to start making the exchanges elsewhere on the board to circle back to that.
Yep. Yeah. It's interesting because the Blood Knights aren't super hammers, obviously, when they're just running around standard. That's, certainly not the case. But on the right, oftentimes, especially if you've got the reroll 1s up to hit, and you've got and you've got Rousing Commander firing off, boy, can they will punch way above their weight in that round. And that's the key, right? You just need to make sure. It's almost like, I hate to make this illusion. I don't want anybody to sort of balk at this. But, like old IDK, a lot of their units weren't that great, but then they would go off in turn 3, right? They would just have this insane turn 3 of stacked power, and they would often win the game. So, like, one really good round where you hammer the opponent can make a big difference. I'm not saying this is the same thing as old EXE. I'm just saying that, like, there's that one powerful round of hammers hitting in the right places can make a big difference, right? So
yes, Dan.
Cool. All right. Anything else, Tom? What do you think about this list? You know what I like about this list, by the way, before you go, Tom? You want to know what it really is? I love.
What's that? It's the fact that you don't have to paint many models.
That's right. That's right. You got 20 easy zombies. You knock those out in an afternoon because who cares? Those are just simple dead guys. And then from there, it's 22 models, easy, just sailing home, right? Like great models that you want to spend some time on. Wonderful.
Well, I look at this and I'm like, well, I have Nagash and 20 zombies.
You're
I'm
almost
like,
20
there.
miles away.
now I
20
just have to get the rarefied blood knights somewhere here in the United States, and then I'm
they're
good
all
to
over the
go.
place, man. They're all over the place now. All over the place now. It's, you just gotta, like, eBay. I'm pretty sure Mini Stomp had a bunch of Blood Knights in recently, so it's they're around. But yes, you just have the hardest piece.
Fine.
All right. Tried and true. So let's talk about Virkos. Take us through. Now, I believe is this pretty much the list you ran at NashCon, or pretty close to it?
So this is the list I went 5-0 with at Circle City. Went through 2 Sons of Bahamut players in the process. This was one of my lists at NashCon. The Legion of Night list was the other one.
Gotcha.
I ended up spending the Legion of Night list early because I saw the writing on the wall. There wasn't shooting lists that were coming up. So I chose to spend it in what I thought was probably looking to be my best matchup. It was not. So that got steamrolled, but that's what it is. So this Virkos list is one of those ones where I sit there and say, I'm going to be a ton of drops. That's fine.
Yep. Yes, because this is 9 drops, right? So just it's fine.
You're probably making me go first. That's fine. If you're choosing to go first, that's even better in many instances. Typically, what will end up happening is I will deploy just all the way across. I'll toss probably my zombies in the grave. So what we have here is we have a Vampire Lord on foot with Pack Alpha. What this is once per turn, your general can use a command ability without a command point being spent. His command ability has a dumb loophole that it clears at the start of your next hero phase. So you can stack it. It's dumb.
Dumb but legal.
Yeah. When you have things that are piling in and fighting twice with potentially +3 attacks, it's super dumb. Don't worry, we can get him more attacks. We'll talk about that in just a second. You have Belladama. So on the Vampire Lord, you take the extra movement spell, and that is largely just so that he can get to the right place to use different command abilities, ideally for free. And that model is not going to be engaging. That's not what they're there for. Their job is to not fight. Their job is to stand behind as many, very inexpensive bodies as humanly possible. You have Belladama. I take her with Soul Pike. The Soul Pike isn't the important part. It's her buff that turns 6s into 2 hits. That's the important bit. And occasionally turning things into wolves. Having the +1 casting while also having the reroll within Virkos ends up being pretty good. So keep track now. We've got 3 castings so far. We've got the Vengorian Lord, who takes flaming weapons for +1 damage on his sword, and then the artifact that's +D3 attacks when you charge. So beefy thing is good. Vengorian Lords hand out a reduce your rend by 1 bubble.
Yep.
And that ends up being pretty key because it takes the bite out of a lot of stuff that's going to be headed your way. The Vengorian Lord has 1 cast, so we're up to 4. All right. Next up, you have the Necromancer, who has the incredible Pile and Fight Twice command ability on summonable units. We have a couple of those that we'll be dealing with. And then the Arcane Tome with Overwhelming Dread. Overwhelming Dread is the -1 to hit spell. So we're up to 6. Then you've got Manfred, who is a 2-caster. And Manfred is there to be annoying and to be best friends with the Vengorian Lord.
Right.
Because the 2 of them, when they go to fight the thing that they want to fight, very few things are going to be able to stand up to that combination. Manfred is also there as bait. If you choose to charge him, then I just go, cool, thank you. He's coming over here. So we've got 8 casting attempts. So we are able to throw a lot of dice at even some of the more capable casting armies. I'm not going to get everything off, but that's okay. Manfred's command ability to hand out the +1 to hit, +1 to wound aura, pretty good. And then handing out in the combat phase potentially a +1 attack aura for units as well, assuming that Manfred kills something with his sword, which happens when I don't need it to and doesn't when I do. So take that as you will. So this comes along with a unit of 40 zombies, which usually go off table to make my opponent scared and sad. A unit of 10 skeletons to be a screen or just kind of shore up a weak side. A unit of 20 Graveguard. These are my can openers, and like they'll Graveguard annihilate everything that they touch in this list. And then you've got a unit of 30 skeletons. You run that with Warlord for the extra artifact. That's how you're able to take Sangsarin and the Arcane Tome.
Yep.
The Arcane Tome's more important than Sangsarin, but that also ends up being pretty alright. And then Hunters, and that goes to the zombies, the skeletons, the 30 brick of skeletons, and the Graveguard.
Sure.
So this is something where I'm going to slowly and patiently move you into the place where I'd like you. This is an army that you need to be able to play out all 5 battle rounds to win a lot of your games. You need to have a direction from the very start and understand where it's all headed. You need to understand that there's going to be a time and place to change direction on some of this. You have to be patient and willing to understand that Manfred and the Vengorian Lord, one of them in some instances may die. It's probably the Vengorian Lord. But if your opponent is spending resources in that direction, you are already winning. You are already winning that game, because what they need to be focusing on is the heroes that are standing behind the wall of guys that are slowly just moving towards the middle, towards those objectives. If you've chosen to ignore one of my grave sites, then the zombies are going to come out from that direction, and now I've closed the door on one of the sides. Right? It is a very slow and suffocating play style, but that's the way I really like to play my armies where possible. So this is an army that I've ended up getting a lot of practice with. I've 5-0'd with it. I've gotten best death in other places with it. This is just an army that I think is really good.
Yeah, I really like this list. I like it because it goes right to what I was talking about at the beginning, right? Like, it has a lot of different tools that can be deployed in lots of different ways, right?
This is the exact kind of list that I like.
Yeah, I mean, this is very much up your road, Tom, right? Like, there's a lot of different options. It plays a very careful, strategic game. It's winning often through, like, it's like, it's very much about the positional game. It's about playing to the objectives, and then somebody makes a misstep, and like I said, you're able to capitalize on it, right?
Yep.
But it's got some really good tools in it that I love, whether you're talking about the multi-stack attack Graveguards. Manfred is just a really funny thing, because depending on... I wonder if you ran into this situation at all. Did you run into a situation at all at NashCon? Because it was pretty good. Like, NashCon had some pretty great terrain. It's pretty big pieces, thanks to our good friend in the chat, Crazy Horse. And Manfred's interesting because he can, when you're trying to block off lanes of movement, he can just sort of go land and be somewhere, and like you can set him up as this weird piece of chaff, and your opponent's choice is like, okay, well, I can't go over the terrain because there's a lot of like impassable terrain in NashCon, right? If you're playing with good terrain, and their choice is like, well, I can move up and I guess charge Manfred, and nothing happens, right? You just kind of can cap their movement.
Right.
He can almost act like the fox trick.
Like a movement debuff, right? Because you're just like, peace out.
Right. Like they charge you and then you just leave. And you've now, in the same way people limit movement with foxes, right? Because they get way up close knowing that the fox isn't actually going to be in any kind of melee threat. Manfred can actually pull the same trick. He can like land and block off, use terrain to stop people, to be in the way to stop up their movement. And then when they actually charge him, he's just like, okay, bye. And then he just teleports away.
Hey, goodbye. Yeah. Yes, but, it ends up being less effective. One of the other things that I'll do with Manfred is I will charge him in my turn, I will go, okay, cool. I'm going to teleport him. My opponent goes, well, you charged him. Why would you do that? I was like, well, because I want him over here. And then I pile him in 3 inches to move his bubble up 3 inches because he successfully completed a charge.
Yep.
It's very dumb. You have to be willing to see all the different. It's very dumb. It's not fair. It's very dumb.
He teleports away. He's still got the momentum. The teleportation doesn't rob him of the momentum. So he just continued. He was moving forward, then he blipped away. When he blips somewhere else, he's like, he just coasts still. It's like it's like when the DeLorean in Back to the Future shifts. You know, that car is still moving at 88 miles an hour. It doesn't pop out stopped in 1955. Manfred's just a DeLorean. That's all it is.
Okay, yeah. So, but it is an army that you've got to be willing to see all of the different angles of approach. If you're not willing to be patient, if you're not willing to invest the time in how to play the different missions, you are going to not be successful. This is a list that kind of got away from me a little bit early, and the more time I put into it, the more successful I became playing it. Because it combines, aside from Blood Knights, basically every good unit in the game. I have created a mini dispersed Nagash, through my casting endeavors.
Sure.
Like, to a certain level of this, like it's a very discount Nagash.
Sure.
In the casting offense that you're going to get, you get more combat offense. So you have less flexibility in some of your choices, but that's what you get for not running the big man himself. I've really enjoyed this list. I've really enjoyed the way that it plays on the table. I've really enjoyed the way that it looks. I've really enjoyed that it challenges me to win some of these games in the way that I have to. It goes toe to toe with a lot of the real big scary stuff, and like, I hate pulling the cards, like, but I have the credentials to prove it. So.
Yep. No, absolutely. And it's got a couple, like, both of its monsters are relatively tough. Again, good battle tactic capability there to complete based on those, right? They're not only tough, but they can also do damage. So you can achieve the kill something with a monster bonuses, right? Like, there's all these little points around the edge that you can make up. And, like, those things add up over the course of a game, right? You get an extra battle point here, you get an extra battle point there, or victory point, sorry. Those things are adding up, right? So, yeah, I really like this list. We haven't praised Belladama, I think, enough. I've run SPG a few times because I have this isn't one of, like, my actual armies, but it's not one of my 20 actual armies, but I do have an old collection of death stuff from, like, the 90s, and so sometimes I get it out when I want a fun game and I play Soulblight. And I've used Belladama a bunch of times. She shows up all the time. I truly love this model. Like, her capabilities are everything I want in a 200-point hero. She's so good in what she can do. Her utility, her survivability, what she brings to the army, I just think she's absolutely wonderful. So, I mean, I cannot praise this model enough. Like, she just works so well for me, or has worked so well for me. I think she's fantastic in what she brings. Okay. Cool beans. Tom, any final thoughts on this?
No, I mean, like, I think what these lists all show is there are a lot of different play styles. There are a lot of different ways to approach this. It's a very diverse book. And I think that there's a lot of play in it. It just makes me sad that Night Haunt is in the state that it's in. looking at all the tools here, like, it's so funny. We looked at the.
I got the one in the case too, Tom. I understand.
Like the just play list, and you're like 5 hammers, and I was like, what I wouldn't give for 1 hammer.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's the challenge. And, as we mentioned earlier, your main challenge is with this is gonna largely be reliant on, how much shooting is around. Some of the characters can be a bit squishy, let's call it, right? Yep. to that kind of shooting. So you have to be aware of that kind of stuff. You know, that's the real challenge of it. So, but you know, I think it's a list with a lot of angles. And I'm sure Nighthaunt will get a new book soon. They have to be the ones due for a book in death, right? I mean, it has to be. Either that, or we'll get a new OBR book and then Soulblight Gravelords 2. And Nighthaunt will just forget they existed.
Don't say that. You're going to make me cry.
Tom, you're the one who decided to play the army whose leader is the Mortarch of Sadness and Grief. So, I'm just saying. That's just meta.
Fair dinkum.
Yeah, like when Sodesh came out, I was like, well, this new book is so crap, it's completely appropriate. All these upper points, I was like, this is some sadism if I've ever seen it, and I've got to be a masochist to play it. So it's perfect. It's very on brand, and you know, Nighthaunt could be the same way. There you go. All right. Let's talk about some other. Let's just do some open discussion here. There's some items I want to discuss, just in our sort of general discussion. Okay. First item of discussion. Actually, I'm going to leave it off the list. I'm going to start completely off list. One guy that didn't show up in any of your lists, and I think he's worth mentioning. Let's talk about Chadakar the Beast. What do you think about Chadakar? Did you just not have him in a list because you couldn't find a place for him? Does he never make the cut for you? What's your take on him there?
So I'm not a very aggressive player. Mm-hmm. I would much more categorize my playstyle as patient oriented.
By the way, hit like for the dog sitting in the chair. Look at this.
Yeah. Look
at how cute this dog is. You've got to hit like now, right? If the dog will be sad if you don't hit like. There you go. All right, go ahead.
I think he fits best with a bunch of Blood Knights going fast, being aggressive. Since that's not my normal orientation towards things, I've just not found a place that fits in the way that I like to play the list. I've been trying to toy around with some Castelli Radikar the Beast armies.
Sure.
You know, I think that has some ability, the ability to be +1 attack on units that are already quite good on the charge. Yeah, Tom, you know, I think you'll agree with me. Making things that are already good at what they're doing better is usually the direction you want to go from a competitive perspective. Right. Reduce variation.
Right. Make things more reliable.
It's funny because there was the raffle at Holy Havoc, right? And I didn't win anything in it. Everybody it's a raffle. That's what happens sometimes. I bought some tickets, didn't win anything. No big deal. But I had my eye on two things. One was the little Stormcast hero. They had the cool limited edition individual Stormcast killer dude, the hunter guy. There's a couple of them up there, and I was like, oh, neat, I can turn him into a rat. I was real excited about I was going to take this little tiny box where there were still Bellicors and stuff up there to pick. No, I just want this little tiny dude because I don't have him, right? And it'd be fun to turn into a rat hero. But the other one there was a Chadakar up there, and I was like, I just want to paint that guy. He seems super cool. He's just such a nice model. So those are going to be my picks. But anyways, c'est la vie. Okay, let's talk hammers. Velazda, Blood Knights, Graveguard. Who is the true? What are you putting your vote into, Brendan? If you had to pick just one and only one of these, I think they can all act as hammers. What is your one pick? What's your top hammer?
The unit that has been most reliable for me, the unit that has kind of done the most heavy lifting. I mean, I've zeroed Mega Gargants with Graveguard. Full to zero with Graveguard. Now, obviously they have buffs involved, right? You know, you're getting +1 to wound. You know, you're getting +1 to hit in many instances. You've usually got +1 attack. But Graveguard are just so good. And the ability to get a weird 10-man of them later in the game through Battle Shock recovery somewhere where your opponent doesn't want them is great investment, because that's one of the things that I think people are ignoring when they're considering the points value of these different units. Is there is a high likelihood in the post-fac of this book where you're able to make that roll in every Battle Shock phase where you can discount everything that you are buying by some percentage, because you are likely to get it back at some point to play the game later somewhere else.
Yep. I like that. Okay, cool. It's interesting because we're in this meta that doesn't seem to favor, what do I want to say? Like, I don't
Hordes.
necessarily want to. Well, hordes was a little bit more simplistic than I was going, but sure, let's just say hordes, right? Like
slow-moving infantry blocks. How about that?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Tom. That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, now you got it, right? That was the fine point I was trying to make. Yes.
Right.
And yet I do think that Graveguard can be really interesting. And by the way, it's not like these things are actually mutually exclusive, right? You of course could have a Velazda and Graveguard. Like, it's not like as though you take one and you lock out the other, right? And they are very interesting in how they're different. But I think Graveguard are one of those few exceptions that, because of the nature of the buffs they had, that because of the nature of that you can protect them, because of the fact that you can restore them, get a whole unit back if they're obliterated, well, get half a unit back, I guess is what I would say, if they're obliterated, right, later in the game. It does make them an interesting pick in a meta that almost doesn't want units like that to work. Right? I think they're one of the few exceptions. I think there are some units that are still out there that can work in those kind of numbers, and I think they're one of them. Because of that interesting form of almost like, I don't necessarily want to call it resiliency, but it's that same concept that they have, right? It's not traditional resiliency. Like, they have a high save or a big ward or something like that. It's this sort of weird orthogonal resiliency, right? In that they can gain units back, they can be off table, they can pop back up in a half strength unit later, etc. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah. 2x20s are fierce. I don't see any reason to really ever go up to 30. In the event that you make them, you trigger the battle line if categorization on them. You've already invested in a White King. It's already an inefficient choice. Going up to 30, I don't ever think does enough for you. 2x20s are quite good. 20 standalone, also very good.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, this one we already discussed a little, which was Battle Line, Skeletons, Zombies, Direwolves, uses of each. We talked about that. They all have their own value. We didn't talk about Direwolves too much throughout this. I mean, I kind of made a point about it, but what's your current take on Direwolves? Where are you finding use for them, or where are you at?
They're so good.
Okay.
They're so good. Their battle line, you can bring them up to 30, which is a 60 wound unit. 2 wounds apiece, 5 up save, got your death save after it, you've got the ability to regen, you've got the ability to bring them back. If somehow your opponent has made their way through that absolute brick of nonsense that takes up a shockingly huge piece of board real estate,
right?
You have the ability then to bring them back, and I'm skipping ahead here on Curse City. If you happen to be taking Gorslav, you can spend a command point and bring 15 of them back immediately without having to roll the dice, in your hero phase. Done.
Yep.
Done.
I'm a fan of Gorslav. Continue.
Done. Yeah. Direwolves are great. Direwolves are extra great, when you're using Belladama to turn a unit into, a guy in the unit into wolves, making them forced to either, 1, retreat, or 2, pile in weird directions.
Sure.
They're fast. They're a very good screen. They take up good board space. It's like their battle line, right? That's the other part of it. I don't know. They're just good.
Yeah.
I
agree with all this.
Right. I haven't played them because the points just haven't fit into some of the lists that I'm looking to do. Like, you would be perfectly well understood for wanting to play Virkos and dumping a ton of points into wolf-based things. That'd be totally fine. You can take wolves as screens for your Blood Knight lists. That's totally fine. You can take a unit of wolves and just let them be weird. Just
they
run
also
them around.
bodyguard for Belladama too, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Which is also good because, old Granny Goodness over there. She's even better and tougher when she's got some nice wolves that she can pass wounds off to, and then those can be restored in some way. So not
She
bad
makes
at
a
all.
really interesting ally too.
Oh, for other death armies.
Yeah, for other obviously like Night Haunt's really the only one because they get Soulblight, right? They still do.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes.
Just thinking
You're
about
asking
the
the wrong guy.
standpoint, just because like she can like her. This obviously applies in Soulblight, but applies even as an ally. Like the Lycan curse
Shuts off shooting units.
Well, it shuts off shooting units, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, you don't need a chaff unit to come in if you've turned, D3 Sentinels into wolves.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
It's good. Good pick is good, Tom. Like that's the.
No, I agree.
Yep. All right. What units simply aren't worth it? In other words, it's a big book. What are we never picking?
There's only one unit that you have no reason to take under any circumstance.
Okay. Wow. That's a tight list. All right. I'm ready.
Black Knights. That's it.
Okay.
You can justify the taking of White Kings to transition Graveguard to Battle Line. We have a list where they are present there. Where the White King is an inexpensive general that allows you to trigger the rest of the Castelli stuff. As you move through your heroes, you can find arguments for all of the rest of them, either turning something into battle line, a specific spell, some particular integration with other things. When you look at the units themselves, outside of obviously like the underworld stuff and those things that aren't like real units, with the rare exception, right? Like where you have Rippa Snarlfangs, which
Sure.
suddenly are good everywhere. The only unit in that book that I have not written a list with because they're just terrible is Black Knights. They serve no purpose. They are caught between Dire Wolves and Blood Knights in terms of role. They don't have the points to justify that different role. Like, heck, people were sitting there going, Fellbats are dumb, Fellbats are useless, Fellbats are garbage. I can more readily find a role for Fellbats than I can for Black Knights.
Sure. All right, now I want to challenge you on this a little. Are we truly saying that you've written lists that have either the Bloodseeker Palanquin or the Coven Throne in them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I believe it's the Bloodseeker Palanquin that has a +1 save command ability. That was particularly very good at the end of 2.0. The Coven Throne has, or maybe I've got them flipped, but one of them has a +1 attack aura for vampire things. So I've been trying to shove all the vampires into Castelli lists very early. It's not been as effective as I'd like. But the Vargeist share the right keywords to be able to benefit from some of these things. There's some stuff that's less effective than others, right? But Black Knights are the only ones that on the surface, as I look at and go through, I go, there are other units that exist at better points that do better things.
All right. Okay. All right. I like it. And yeah, it was switched, but yes, I knew what you meant. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about Cursed City. And I actually want to kind of I want to make this a little bigger topic. This army has a lot of named heroes, right? And a lot of the named stuff comes in through, like, Cursed City gave us a lot, because I still believe that, like, Kritza and Anyanka, or whatever her name is, what's her name? Anika? Whatever, the pointy hair lady.
Yeah.
Lady Anika. I still think they were somehow supposed to be related to Cursed City. I don't know that they're necessarily an expansion, but I think they were supposed to be more tightly related, and then just Cursed City went, pfft, and then that all died. Truly one of the great tragedies of our time.
It's like Firefly.
Yeah, sure, it's right up there. With Cursed City and all these named heroes, Okay. First question, do you find it annoying that they put everybody, all these named heroes, into Virkos? That it became the Hammers of Sigmar of
Yeah.
the Soulblight book?
Sure. Yeah, it's very annoying because the example I was going to give was Hammers of Sigmar. Like, this is exactly what it feels like.
Right.
I wish they spread them out more. Lakavai, being a named character into Avangori is neat. You have your named character for Legion of Night, you have your named character for Legion of Blood, cool. You have your named character for Castellai. I think this might be the first book where all of your sub-factions have a named character that sits within them, but Games Workshop went hard in the paint of like, we are doing Virkos, and we are going to be doing Virkos for a long time, so you got to get used to it. But also the thing that might be tied to being Virkos might not be a thing. So
yeah, kind of blew up there. Oops. Yeah, because clearly there had to be a long-term rollout plan for Virkos, right? Where it was going to be all intertwined with this evolving set of Cursed City expansions that were going to roll out over the next 2 years. And then, oops. So, yeah.
Oops, all Virkos.
Yeah, exactly.
All the way down.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when you look at the lore and what it's tied to, maybe like if you were looking at splitting them up again, you could put Lady Anika in Legion of Blood as, one of Neferata's spies and agents, that infiltrate different courts. You could put the Rat Prince into Legion of Night as, creature of the night, right? He disappears and pops back up again. He's very evasive. Maybe that's how you spread him out into some different factions. And I don't think that would necessarily be, a total stretch of the imagination. You want to tie them all into Virkos. You want to tie them all into, the specific like Radikar bloodline. Fine, whatever. None of them are so good that I'm dying to get them into other lists. They are largely inexpensive heroes that, maybe you take to fill battalion slots.
Yep. Kritza is interesting to me because I've been a stan of this little weirdo for a long time, okay? Maybe it's my innate love of rats. Maybe that's why you don't, how do you feel about Kritza? Is it too close to Skaven? Is the rat influence too strong? Is he going in the ocean?
It's really pushing it. If someone told me he had to go with him, I'd go, okay, if this is the cost of...
all rat-related things.
All rat-related things into the ocean.
But Kritz is interesting because he's still a bonus general, right, in Virkos. Mm-hmm. But he can also die and come back. And so he's kind of just this funny piece that if somebody kills him, it pushes your heroic action to get a command point to a 2-up for the entire game. For, like, no reason.
I really wish the FAQ didn't correct the exponential Kritz's Kritz attack. If for nothing else, I wanted to see, 16 of them on the table. Man, go ahead, roll those dice, go nuts, like become everything that you wish to be in an exploding nonsense machine. It's one of those dumb ones that I just wanted to see it once.
Sure, I understand. But more broadly, we've already talked about Gorslav the Gravekeeper, and, obviously Gorslav is worth it. Okay, I don't think... 75 points for this dude. He's redonk for what he accomplishes, okay?
He's doing some work for 75.
He shovels well, okay? But who else from Cursed City is worth it? What other units have you looked at and thought this could have a home?
On paper, Bloodborne, I have not spent any time to put them in lists and try them. The difficulty of trying to spend a reinforcement point to bring them to 6 to have very, very fighty guys is interesting, but not compelling enough for me to spend too much time on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think all of the heroes are just kind of generically okay. The kind of pseudo necromancer guy is fine.
Candle guy.
Yeah, the chumpy version of Radikar is
The
fine.
problem is he's so overshadowed by he revealed his final form. Like, we all know the final form is better than we've played video games. We know how this works.
Yeah, he looks cooler. He does cooler things. The guard captain is fine. Like, the problem I end up having is all of it, like, I just end up shrugging my shoulders and going, it's okay. The Vargas gear is fine. And I don't know that all of them are, like, if they came down in points, that I'd be sitting there going like, oh, well, you gotta take this guy.
Right.
They just do some stuff. Gorslav is the only one that you look at and you go, I am gonna get some mileage out of this character. And if my opponent commits 200 points of their army to killing this guy, I am successful and ahead of schedule.
Right. Yeah, the Virkos, the Bloodborne are interesting because right now they're clearly too many points for what they are. Like, they're an interesting unit. They're fast, 10-inch move. They have a 5-up after save on their own. I mean, they've only got a 6-up base save, so whatever. But they're only 3 wounds. But they've got a decent enough profile. Like, they're 3 attacks each, 3s, neg 1, d3 damage. It's not a terrible profile on these little dudes. And
yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine, right? Like, I could see a use for them if they were... Those are one of the few that, like, they are also vampires, so there is, like, some synergy and some of the other vampire-related nonsensory going on in the army, as we've mentioned previously. And I think they would be interesting if they were dropped in points. Like, I understand why they're in 3s and why they're like they are. 3 is an annoying number, because then when you do reinforce them, they go to 6 and get weird coherency rules and stuff, like blah, 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 whatever. But they're the kind of thing that, like, maybe if they were a little cheaper, like 100 points for 3 maybe or something, I could see it. 95 points for 3, something like that. Like, I could see their interesting value as this. Maybe you're not wasting any reinforcement points on them. Maybe if they're that cheap, they become an interesting sort of skirting unit to go around the outside, and just kind of like, a unit of 3 of them having 9 attacks on 3s, neg 1, d3 damage. It's not bad. It's not bad. They can do a little work to clean up some of the stuff on the edge, to be a little tiny flanking force to handle some of the stuff, to threaten things in the back, to threaten heroes, things like that. Like, I could see a use for them as almost like a little distraction piece if they were cheap enough. At 125, they're just too much. That's the problem.
And the other thing, them being keyword locked to gaining Virkos' benefits.
Right.
One of the things that I think they'd be kind of all right at is coming off the side of a board edge in Night.
Yep. Yeah, I don't understand why those are keyword locked. Like, I guess I understand some of the named heroes, but them being Virkos is just, I don't know. It's a weird choice. It's a weird choice. Okay. Cool. Anything else we missed on Soulblight? Anything else we didn't cover? I mean, I think we've hit a lot of the main points I wanted to touch on, which were, there's a lot of units that can have a lot of play. The army can function a lot of different ways. Yes, there are some headwinds against it with the shooting meta, like with I don't even know, like, with shooting meta, whatever, but like with the shooting that's present, right? And that's true. But they're still holding a good win rate overall. I think somebody had said earlier that from memory they're like a 52 to 55%. That's great. It's a fantastic win rate. That's where we'd like armies to be in the game, basically, right? You want to, like, in a perfect world, we'd shrink our fat middle to 45 to 55%. That would be wonderful. They're very popular. It's a great unit. It's a great range with beautiful models, interesting different play styles. Like, yeah, I don't, it's a triumph. I think it's one of the best books they've put out. I really, like, it's up there with the Slaves to Darkness book for me, which I've always held up as a paragon of design.
I've been enjoying quite a bit of.
Yeah, I think they're both like paragons of good design. That isn't to say they're perfect. I didn't say perfect design. I said good design, right? There are still units I have challenges with. There are still, things that are in those books that rub me the wrong way, or where I feel like they made a mistake, or that something could have been designed better. But when I look at either of those books, I see compelling subfactions. I see multiple different ways to play the army. Lots of different valid units depending on your army construction. Interesting utility going on, right? Like, and both these books feel very similar. Like Soulblight and Slaves to Darkness are like spiritual twins to me in the way that they can function. So they both feel like kind of the what do I want to say, like the golden mean of how we should be designing books. Books should feel like this book. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, no disagreements.
I agree with that.
Yeah, the other one that kind of ends up fitting into this category in my mind was the first pass at Warclans. The second pass at Warclans here I think was great. Though bringing it full circle, those two are the books for me that I recommend to people who want to get started learning to play the game competitively, that I point them in the direction of right now. Stormcast is probably going to get added to that list post some points adjustments and FAQs, where there's not a single clear and obvious way right now to be playing some of these units. The fact that you can look at a book and say, I have a ton of choices and I can figure out what works best for me is really where you want the player base to be. You want it to allow players to shine as who they are, playing what they think is cool. And for me to sit here and say there's only one unit that I think is just garbage, tells you that as a player, that aside from really incredibly strange combinations of things, you don't have to feel like an idiot for taking whatever unit you think is cool.
Right. It's really nice. Okay. Prussian Warfare said, where does Soulblight land on the army design chart thingy? So the power versus quality of design chart that I have, the quadrants, they would absolutely be in the sweet spot, Prussian. Like exactly where we would want a book to be. They like right where sort of Slaves is up there, like up in the good design area and just slightly forward. That's exactly what they this book would sit like almost over top of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's exactly what you said. You almost don't, like, you have your different units you're going to like in this. There's going to be things that appeal to you, and there's going to be a list that can make that viable, interesting, competitive in some way. That's an incredible thing to say, right? Other than those poor people who love Black Knights, which I do agree with that. They are, like, I don't know if I agree that everything else is playable. I might add a couple more things to that list, but we'd be quibbling around the edges at most, right? Like, I agree with your core point, which is that so vastly much of this is playable, which is not what we usually get. So, yeah. Tom, any final thoughts?
Never.
No, I mean, I think that captures it, right?
Yeah. New Graveguard sculpt win. It is funny to look at the new, really nice big skeletons, and then to look at your teeny tiny little baby Graveguard who just like show up and are like, "Wah!" Kill everything. You're like, "Oh, you're the little baby skeletons. Why are you so dangerous?" They're like little Chuckies.
They have a Napoleonic complex, is what it is. They're looking to make up for the difference in height with with the difference in output.
Absolutely. All right, well, there we go, folks. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to hit like. Don't forget that the dog very much wants you to hit like. There she is. See, she's looking at you right now, asking you to hit the like button. Isn't that right? She agrees. Trust me. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Brendan, thank you, brother. It was great seeing you this last weekend. It's wonderful to have you on the show. Thank you for coming back on and sharing the Soulblight Gravelords. A very hard book to say. Love with us. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Happy to be here, guys. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. For all of you out there, thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it. As